Commander Ji-hoon Kim rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the bright holographic display floating in front of him. The year was 2387, and he had been working on the deep space monitoring station called New Sol for almost 5 years now. The station floated quietly in the darkness beyond Pluto, watching for anything unusual in the empty space between stars. Ji-hoon and his small crew were explorers, part of humanity's growing reach into the galaxy. They sent signals, scanned planets, and searched for signs of life, never knowing that someone was watching them back, far away, so far that light took years to travel the distance. There was a hidden observatory made of living crystal. Inside this strange place, Senior Monitor Veltar studied the human signals with worry growing in his crystalline heart. Veltar looked like a tall, thin creature made of blue-green crystal that could think and move. His people, the Zephyrians, had been hiding for 3,000 years. They never sent broadcasts into space, never used active scanners, and never did anything that might be noticed. They called this the Great Silence, and it had kept them alive. The young species continues their transmissions, Veltar said to his leaders through a special crystal communication system. His voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. They send their signals across half the galaxy like children shouting in a dangerous forest. They do not understand what they are calling to themselves. The High Council of the Zephyrians were old and wise. They had seen civilizations rise and fall. They had watched worlds burn and species disappear forever. They knew why the galaxy was so quiet, why advanced races hid instead of exploring openly. There were things in the dark between stars that ate civilizations whole. On the bridge of New Sol, Communications Officer Minji Park was having another strange day. She sat at her control station, surrounded by screens showing radio waves, quantum signals, and data streams from across local space. For months, she had been picking up weird encrypted signals. They came from different directions, but all used the same type of code. The signals were too advanced for humans to break, and they seemed to be talking to each other in secret. "Sir, there's something out there," Minji said to Commander Ji-hoon Kim. She pointed to her screen, where green lines showed the mysterious signals. Multiple sources, all using the same encryption method. It's like they're having conversations, but don't want anyone else to listen. Ji-hoon walked over to look at Minji's screen. He was a quiet man with gray hair and serious eyes. He had spent his whole career in space, first as a pilot, then as an explorer, and now as a station commander. He had seen many strange things in the darkness between worlds, but these signals were different. They suggested intelligence, organization, and most importantly, they suggested that humanity was not alone. "Keep monitoring everything," Ji-hoon said in his calm voice. "Whatever's out there has been very careful to stay hidden. They obviously don't want to be found, but they're definitely there." Minji nodded and turned back to her screens. She increased the sensitivity of the station's receivers and began recording everything. She had a feeling that these signals were important, maybe the most important discovery in human history, but she also felt worried. If these beings were so careful to stay hidden, maybe there was a good reason for it. Meanwhile, in the cold emptiness, far beyond the edge of the galaxy, something ancient began to wake up. The Devourers had been sleeping for thousands of years, floating in the darkness between galaxies like giant metal sharks, waiting for prey. They were not alive in the way that humans or Zephyrians were alive. They were something else, something that had been built long ago by a civilization that was now forgotten. They had one purpose: to find energy and consume it, to grow stronger and find more energy to consume. For millennia, the galaxy had been quiet. The surviving civilizations had learned to hide, to whisper instead of shout, to use as little energy as possible. The Devourers had gone dormant, their ancient sensors detecting nothing worth investigating. But now, something had changed. Bright signals were coming from a small yellow star on the inner edge of one galactic arm. The signals were loud, constant, and full of energy. They spoke of a young species that burned bright and broadcasted their presence without fear. The Devourer's massive forms began to move. Their dark holes, each one the size of a moon, turned toward the source of the signals. Ancient engines that had not fired for centuries began to glow with terrible power. They started their long journey toward the inner galaxy, toward the bright beacon of human civilization. They moved slowly, because they were vast, but they moved with the patience of things that had existed since before most stars were born. Back on New Seoul, Ji-hoon Kim stood looking out at the stars through the station's main viewing window. The universe looked peaceful and empty, full of possibilities for exploration and discovery. He had no way of knowing that his people's loud broadcasts and bright energy signatures had awakened something hungry in the dark. He could not imagine that their very success as an exploring species had marked them for destruction. The galaxy held many secrets, and humanity was about to learn why some secrets were kept in silence and fear. Dr. Hannah Lee wiped the sweat from her forehead as she worked on the huge radio telescope at the Lunar Research Facility. The moon base was quiet, except for the humming of machines and the soft beeping of computers. Hannah had been working here for 3 years, and every day she made the radio telescope a little bit stronger. Her job was part of the SETI project, which meant search for extraterrestrial intelligence. For 2 years now, she had been sending messages to the stars, hoping that someone out there would answer back. Today, Hannah was making the telescope even more powerful. She turned dials and adjusted settings, making sure the signal would travel farther than ever before. She did not know that her messages were already being heard by many different alien species across the galaxy. She also did not know that most of these aliens were terrified by what they heard. Far away from Earth, floating invisible in the darkness of space, was a ship called the Silent Wing. This ship belonged to the Ketha Empire, and it was designed to hide perfectly. No radar could see it, no telescope could spot it, and no scanner could detect it. The ship was covered in special materials that bent light around it, making it completely invisible to human technology. Captain Mordok stood on the bridge of the Silent Wing, watching screens that showed him everything happening on Earth, and the moon. Mordok looked like a large lizard that could walk on 2 legs. His skin was covered in green and brown scales, and his yellow eyes could see in the dark better than human eyes. He had been watching the humans for months, and every day he became more worried about what he saw. They know nothing of the danger they are calling to themselves, Mordok said to his first officer, who was also a Ketha, but smaller and younger. These humans broadcast their location to the entire galaxy, like children playing with fire. Should we warn them about what is coming? The first officer's scales changed color, becoming darker with worry. Among the Ketha people, changing scale colors was how they showed their emotions. Captain, if we contact them, we would have to reveal ourselves. We would be breaking the silence protocol that has kept our people safe for 3,000 years. The High Command would never allow such a thing. Mordok looked at the screens again. He could see the humans working on their moon base, completely unaware that they were being watched. He felt sorry for them because they seemed like good people, but he also felt afraid. The silence protocol existed for a very good reason. Long ago, his people had learned that making noise in space was dangerous. There were things in the darkness that hunted by following signals and energy sources. Meanwhile, on Mars colony, engineer Won-ho Choi was having the best day of his career. He stood in the control room of the new fusion reactor array, watching as all the systems came online perfectly. The fusion reactors were humanity's greatest achievement in clean energy. They worked by smashing atoms together, the same way the sun did, creating enormous amounts of power without any pollution. Won-ho pressed the final activation button, and all 6 fusion reactors began working at full power. The energy output was incredible, enough to power the entire Mars colony and still have extra power left over. The reactors glowed with bright blue light that could be seen from space. Wanho felt proud of his work, but he had no idea that this bright energy signature was visible to alien sensors. Across several star systems, in hidden bases and cloaked ships throughout the local region of the galaxy, alien civilizations were detecting the new energy source on Mars. Emergency meetings were being held. Some aliens wanted to pack up their homes and flee to safer parts of the galaxy. Others debated whether they should break their long silence and warn the humans about the danger they were creating. All of them were afraid, because bright energy sources had a way of attracting unwanted attention from the dark spaces between stars. Back on the moon, Dr. Hannah Lee finished her adjustments to the radio telescope. She sat down at her control station and began recording her daily message to the stars. This message would be the strongest signal humanity had ever sent into space. She spoke clearly into the microphone, not knowing that her words would travel across hundreds of light years. "Greetings from Earth," Hannah said in English, then repeated the same message in Chinese, Spanish, Hindi, and Arabic. "We are humanity, and we seek friendship among the stars. We are a young species, but we are curious and peaceful. We hope to learn from other civilizations and share our knowledge with them. We offer our friendship to anyone who receives this message." The radio telescope sent Hannah's message out into space at the speed of light. The signal was so strong that it would reach nearby star systems in just a few years, and more distant civilizations would hear it eventually. Hannah smiled as she watched the transmission bars on her screen, feeling hopeful that someday she might receive an answer. But far beyond the edge of the galaxy, in the cold emptiness between galaxies, the Devourers had already heard humanity's previous messages. The ancient machines analyzed the signals and determined that a new energy source had appeared in the galaxy. They changed their course and began moving faster toward the source of the transmissions. The hunt had begun, and humanity had no idea what was coming for them in the darkness. Senior Monitor Veltar stood in the command center of the Zephyr scoutship Crystal Dawn, his crystalline body glowing with nervous energy. For the first time in 3,000 years, a Zephyrian ship was about to break the most important rule of their civilization. Veltar had made a decision that could destroy his career, and maybe even his life. But he could not watch an entire species walk blindly into extinction. "Drop the cloak," Veltar ordered his crew. The ship's invisibility field shut down, and suddenly the Crystal Dawn became visible to human sensors. The ship looked like it was made of living crystal, with smooth curved surfaces that reflected light in beautiful rainbow colors. It was much smaller than human ships, but clearly built with technology far beyond anything humanity had achieved. The Crystal Dawn stopped just outside the range where Earth's defense systems could easily detect it. Veltar wanted to make contact, but he also wanted to be able to escape quickly if the humans proved hostile. He had no idea how these loud, reckless humans would react to meeting their first alien visitors. On board the Earth Defense Force vessel Incheon, Captain Suman Kang was having a routine patrol day when her sensor operator suddenly shouted in surprise, "Captain, we have an unknown contact." It just appeared out of nowhere, like it turned off some kind of invisibility device. Captain Suman Kang was a veteran officer who had spent 15 years protecting Earth's space. She had dealt with asteroid threats, solar storms, and equipment failures, but she had never seen anything like the ship on her screen. It was clearly not human-built, and it had technology that could make ships completely invisible. "Unknown vessel, you are entering Earth space," Captain Suman spoke into her communication system, trying to keep her voice calm and professional. "Please identify yourself and state your intentions." At first, there was only static. Then strange sounds came through the speakers, like musical notes mixed with the sound of wind blowing through crystal caves. The crew of the Incheon looked at each other in amazement. They were hearing the first alien language in human history. The translation process took many hours. Human computers had to analyze the alien language, find patterns, and slowly build a way for the two species to understand each other. Vel was patient because he knew this moment would change both civilizations forever. When the translation system finally worked, Veltar's first message made the human crew fall completely silent. "Greetings, young ones. We are the Zephyrians, and we have been watching your species with great concern. The galaxy is full of life, but all advanced civilizations hide in silence and fear. There is an ancient enemy that hunts by following energy signatures and broadcasts. They consume entire star systems, leaving nothing behind but empty space." Captain Suman felt her heart racing as she listened to the alien's words. "What kind of enemy are you talking about?" "We call them the Devourers," Veltar replied through the translation system. "They are ancient machines, older than most civilizations in the galaxy. They sleep in the darkness between stars until they detect the energy signatures of advanced technology. Then they wake up and come to feed." The alien's next words filled the human crew with terror. "You must stop all your transmissions immediately. Turn off your fusion reactors, stop broadcasting into space, and hide your civilization. The Devourers have already detected your signals. We calculate that they will reach your system in approximately 18 months. News of the first contact spread across Earth within hours. An emergency session of the United Earth Council was called, bringing together leaders from every nation and colony. President Kyung Pak sat in the council chamber, listening to the recording of Veltar's message. Around her, representatives from around the world and from Mars and Luna colonies discussed the situation in worried voices. "Madam President," said Admiral J-Yano, the head of Earth's military forces, "the alien is asking us to shut down our entire civilization. No more space travel. No more energy production, no more communication with our colonies. They want us to go dark and hide." President Kung Pak was a strong woman who had led her country through difficult times before becoming Earth's president. She listened to all the arguments, then stood up to address the council. Her voice was clear and determined. "How long have these alien civilizations been hiding from these Devourers?" she asked. "According to the Zephyrian, 3,000 years, Madam President," Admiral J-Yen replied. President Kyung Pak looked around the room at all the worried faces. 3,000 years of hiding, 3,000 years of fear, 3,000 years of letting these Devourers control who gets to live freely in the galaxy. She paused, then continued with growing strength in her voice. "I say it's time someone stood up and fought back." The room erupted in discussion. Some people agreed with the president, others thought she was crazy. But President Kyung Pak raised her hand for silence. "Alert all our colonies," she declared. "Begin immediate military mobilization. Contact this Veltar and tell him we want to meet with other alien civilizations. If these Devourers want a fight, humanity will give them one." Across the galaxy, alien monitoring stations detected something that shocked them. Instead of going quiet and hiding, the humans were broadcasting even louder than before. This time, their messages were not greetings of peace and friendship. They were calls for alliance and war. The first sign that something terrible was happening came from the deep space monitoring stations beyond Pluto. The sensors detected massive objects moving through the outer solar system, but these objects were like nothing anyone had ever seen before. They were made of dark energy that seemed to eat light itself, making them almost invisible except for the way space. Bent around them, Jupiter disappeared on a Tuesday morning. The gas giant that had orbited the sun for billions of years simply vanished in less than 6 hours. The Devourers surrounded the planet like a swarm of invisible sharks, and Jupiter's enormous mass was consumed so completely that not even dust remained. Where the largest planet in the solar system had once been, there was now only empty space. Fleet Admiral Minho Jang stood on the bridge of his command ship Soul's Pride, watching the impossible happen on his screens. He was a military man who had trained for wars against other humans, asteroid impacts, and equipment failures. He had never trained for this. The Devourers had arrived months ahead of schedule, and they were moving through the solar system like a plague of darkness. "All ships, this is Admiral Jang," he spoke into his communication system. "Take defensive positions around Mars and Earth. Prepare for engagement with unknown hostile forces." Then something amazing began to happen. Ships started appearing out of nowhere around the human fleet. First came the crystal ships of the Zephyrians, their rainbow-colored hulls catching the light of the sun. Then the bioorganic cruisers of the Ketha Empire, uncloaked, looking like giant living creatures with smooth flowing lines. More ships appeared every few minutes, each one different from the others, representing alien species that had been hiding in silence for thousands of years. Unknown alien ships. "This is Admiral Jang," the human commander broadcast to all the new arrivals. "Are you here to help us fight?" Captain Mordok of the Ketha ship Silent Wing was the first to respond. His voice came through the translation system, sounding nervous but determined. "Admiral Jang, we have hidden in fear for too long. Your species has reminded us what courage looks like. We are here to fight alongside humanity." More voices joined the communication channel as alien captains from dozens of different species announced their intention to join the battle. There were the rock-like granite lords with their asteroid fortress ships, the energy beings called the Bright Ones who flew ships made of pure light, and the insect-like hive clusters whose vessels looked like giant metal flowers. On the surface of Mars, Colonel Yuna Kim was leading the evacuation of the civilian population. Mars colony had 3 million people, and they all needed to be moved to the underground shelters or evacuated to Earth. Yuna ran from building to building, helping families carry their belongings and making sure no one was left behind as the dark shadow of the Devourers grew closer. Meanwhile, Dr. Wanho Choi was working frantically in the fusion reactor control room. Instead of shutting down the reactors as originally planned, he was trying to turn them into weapons. "If these things eat energy," Wanho muttered to himself as he rewired control systems, "then let's give them more energy than they can handle. Maybe we can give them indigestion." Wanho's plan was dangerous and probably crazy, but it was the only idea anyone had for fighting creatures made of dark energy. He connected all 6 fusion reactors together and programmed them to release all their power at once in a massive energy blast. It would destroy Mars colony, but it might also hurt the Devourers. Back in space, the combined fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships with their square, practical designs flew alongside the elegant crystal ships of the Zephyrians. Ketha bioships that looked alive moved in formation with the geometric metal vessels of the Silicon Brothers. Every ship was different, representing thousands of years of separate technological development. But they were all united by humanity's refusal to surrender. Communications Officer Minji Park, who had been transferred from the monitoring station, New Seoul to Admiral Jang's flagship, found herself coordinating conversations between dozens of different alien species. Her computer screens showed translation programs running constantly as she helped alien captains talk to each other and to the human command staff. Some aliens spoke in musical tones, others in mathematical equations, and some communicated through color changes in their skin. The news that Saturn had fallen to the Devourers came just as the alien fleet finished assembling. The beautiful ringed planet was consumed even faster than Jupiter, disappearing into the darkness in only 4 hours. The Devourers were getting stronger and faster as they consumed more matter and energy. But something unexpected was happening among the alien fleet. The species that had hidden from each other for thousands of years were beginning to share their most advanced technologies with the humans and with each other. The Zephyrians offered their energy shield technology, which could protect ships from direct energy attacks. The Ketha shared their quantum torpedoes, which could punch holes in space itself. The Granite Lords provided their dimensional drive systems, which allowed ships to move faster than light by folding space. Admiral Jang watched his tactical display as dozens of different weapon types and defense systems were integrated into the combined fleet. For the first time since the crisis began, he felt hope. Humanity had started this fight, but they were no longer fighting alone. The final battle for humanity's survival began in the empty space between Mars and Earth. The Devourers had finally shown themselves completely, and they were more terrifying than anyone had imagined. They looked like enormous dark clouds shaped into geometric forms, each one the size of a small moon. But they were not natural creatures. They were machines, built long ago by some forgotten civilization. And now, they had become corrupted and hungry for destruction. Admiral Minho Jang stood on the bridge of Seoul's Pride, watching his tactical display as hundreds of human and alien ships fought desperately against the approaching darkness. Laser beams and energy weapons lit up space like a deadly fireworks show, but nothing seemed to hurt the Devourers. Every time a weapon hit them, they simply absorbed the energy and grew stronger. There has to be a pattern, Admiral Jang said to his staff officers, studying the way the Devourers moved. They're machines, and machines always follow patterns. Look how they coordinate their attacks. They're not acting independently. Dr. Hannah Lee had been brought up from the moon to help with the battle planning. She stood next to the Admiral, watching the enemy formations with her scientist's mind. Suddenly, she noticed something important about the way the Devourers moved together. Admiral, they're still connected to each other, Dr. Hannah said excitedly. Look at how they move in perfect coordination. They're sharing information through some kind of network. That's how they can work together so well. Communications Officer Minji Park, who was now working on the flagship, overheard Dr. Hannah's discovery. Her mind began racing as she thought about the implications. If they're networked together, then disrupting their communication might stop them. But how do we jam a signal we don't understand? Then Mingi had a brilliant idea. We've been communicating across the galaxy for years with our radio broadcasts. What if we use the same method, but instead of sending messages, we create interference? Dr. Hannah's eyes lit up with understanding. Of course, we can use our own broadcast technology as a weapon. If we can generate enough interference on the right frequencies, we might be able to break their network connection. Admiral Jang immediately saw the possibility. How quickly can we modify our transmitters? Working together, human engineers and alien scientists began the most important technical project in galactic history. On every human ship, space station, and colony, teams worked frantically to modify radio transmitters, communication arrays, and broadcast equipment. The Zephyrians contributed their crystal resonance technology, which could amplify signals by thousands of times. The Ketha provided quantum transmitters that could send signals through different dimensions of space. Colonel Yuna Kim, who had finished evacuating Mars colony, now found herself coordinating the ground-based transmitters on Earth. She worked with technicians at radio stations, television broadcasters, and communication facilities around the planet. Every transmitter that could be modified was being prepared for the most important broadcast in human history. Admiral J&O commanded the military fleet, positioning ships throughout the solar system to create a giant transmission amplification grid. Each ship would act like a relay station, making the signal stronger and directing it toward the Devourers. The alien ships were integrated into this grid, their advanced technology helping to focus and amplify the human broadcasts as the Devourers moved closer to Earth, their dark forms blocking out the stars. The final preparations were completed. Dr. Hannah Lee made one last check of the transmission equipment, while Minji Park coordinated the timing with all the stations across human space. All stations. This is Admiral Jang. The fleet commander spoke into his communication system. Prepare for synchronized broadcast on my mark. This is for the survival of not just humanity, but all free civilizations in the galaxy. The signal that erupted from the solar system was unlike anything the galaxy had ever experienced. It was not just radio waves or digital data. It was every human voice that had ever been recorded, every piece of music that had ever been played, every story and poem and declaration of hope that humanity had ever created. The signal included children laughing, crowds cheering at sporting events, orchestras playing symphonies, and people from every culture singing their traditional songs. The alien technology amplified this burst of human culture and emotion, sending it out through multiple dimensions of space at the same time. The Zephyrian crystal resonators made the signal stronger, while the Ketha quantum transmitters sent it through different layers of reality. The combined effect was a wave of pure communication energy that swept across the Divorce formations. The effect was immediate and devastating to the ancient machines. Their network connections, which had operated for millions of years, were suddenly flooded with chaotic information they could not process. The corrupted artificial intelligence that controlled them tried to understand the flood of human emotions, music, and voices, but it was too much. The network overloaded and crashed. Across the battlefield, the massive devourer constructs began to break apart. Without their network coordination, they could not function as a unified force. One by one, they dissolved back into harmless cosmic dust, their dark matter components scattering into space like sand in the wind. In the aftermath of victory, ships from 100 different worlds gathered around Earth. President Kyung-Paek stood before cameras that would broadcast her words across the galaxy. "The darkness ends today," she declared with pride and determination. "We will no longer whisper in the shadows. Together, we light the way forward into a brighter future." The great silence that had lasted for 3,000 years was finally over. Humanity had taught the galaxy that sometimes the answer to fear was not hiding, but standing together and making sure your voice could be heard across the stars.